Many players in Escape from Tarkov think they're losing fights because of their aim, or because the other guy was cheating. Now look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you cheaters don't exist. They absolutely do in every game. And yes, sometimes the guy who killed you probably was cheating. But after 4,500 hours in Tarkov, I can also tell you that a lot of fights are lost for reasons players don't even realize. It could be due to bad positioning, bad movement, bad peeks, panic decisions, poor crosshair placement, and even taking fights your gear was never capable of winning in the first place. The players who consistently dominate PvP in Tarkov are not always the players with the best aim. They understand positioning, they understand sound, they understand pressure, they know when to slow down, when to push, when to reposition, how to peek, when to heal, and most importantly, how enemy players actually behave under pressure. Hey guys, I'm Ghost and welcome back to Tarkov University. In this video, I'm going to break down some of the biggest mistakes players make in PvP, the habits that are getting you killed, and the strategies that will immediately help you start winning more fights in Escape from Tarkov 1.0. We're going to cover intel peeking, crosshair placement, wide swinging, recoil control, understanding your ammo and armor, aggression, and how to stop panicking during fights so you can start playing with confidence instead of fear. Because the truth is that most Tarkov fights are decided long before somebody goes down. Let's get into it. Okay, so the very first thing we need to talk about is understanding your loadout and what your gear is actually capable of doing. This is one of the biggest mistakes I see new players make consistently in Tarkov. One of the things that makes Tarkov so appealing to me is that unless somebody is wearing an Alton, Tagilla mask, or other type of heavy face shield, almost every caliber in the game is capable of instantly killing a player with a headshot. That means even budget kits are dangerous. A player with trash gear can still absolutely delete a fully geared player if they land all their shots correctly. But know that the opposite is also true. If somebody is heavily armored and you're running weak ammo, there is a very real chance that you are simply not going to win that fight unless you massively outplay them. And this is why understanding ammo is so incredibly important in Tarkov. If you inspect a bullet in Tarkov, you're going to see a million different stats and numbers on the screen. Honestly, most of that information is just noise and can be ignored. The two main stats that you need to focus on are damage and penetration. Damage determines how much flesh damage the round will do once it hits a fleshy part of the body, and penetration determines how effective that round is at getting through armor. A PMC's head in Tarkov has 35 health and there's 85 health in the thorax. If either of those body parts reach 0 due to incoming damage and not a bleed, that player will die instantly. It doesn't matter what weapon they're using, it doesn't matter how rich they are, it doesn't matter how many hours they have, it doesn't even matter how much RGB is glowing off that gaming chair they're currently sweating in. Once they go down, they are out of the raid. And honestly, yeah, this is just one of the biggest reasons I love Tarkov so much. There is no resurrection mechanic, no revive system, no second chance. If you outplay somebody, they're gone, and because of that, solo players can actually dismantle entire teams despite being outnumbered. That fast time to kill creates one of the most intense PvP systems in gaming because positioning and decision making become just as important as mechanical skill. So what does all of this actually mean for you when building your loadout? It's simple. You need to understand what your ammo is realistically capable of before you enter the raid. Let's say your ammo only does around 40 damage. That means that you're going to need 3 penetrating thorax hits to kill somebody through the chest, unless you land the headshot. Now let's say your ammo does 70 damage instead. Suddenly, you only need 2 thorax shots. That dramatically changes how quickly you can end a fight. But then armor enters the equation. Take this green tracer 9mm ammo for example. As you can see, it only has 14 penetration. That means that this is going to go through class 1 armor very easily, it'll struggle against class 2, and realistically it will have a very hard time against anything above that. Now compare that to the armor that people are commonly wearing. For reference, P.A.C.As are class 2, these diaper rigs here are class 4, the popular Korans are class 5, and some armor systems can allow you to run class 6 plates. You could dump an entire magazine of this weak 9mm ammo into class 6 armor and still not kill the guy. That is a huge deal, and this is exactly why I'm stressing this point so much. You need to know what your ammo is capable of. If I'm running weak ammo like this, I'm probably aiming almost exclusively for the face because that is realistically my best chance of winning the fight. And even then, many helmets people wear are class 3 or class 4, meaning weak ammo can still struggle against those too. Now compare that other ammo to something like AP 6.3 or these PvP rounds here. These ammo types massively increase your chance of penetrating helmets and landing lethal shots. As you can see, the penetration is much better. But even then, you're still going to struggle against class 5 or class 6 body armor. But now, at least you'll have a fighting chance to get through those helmets. Now, there is another strategy entirely, and that is called leg meta. Rounds like rip ammo or Luger CCI do massive flesh damage, but they have terrible penetration. So instead of aiming for the head or the thorax and trying to penetrate armor, you instead will aim exclusively for the legs or the arms using a weapon with a high rate of fire. Personally, I don't use leg meta very often because after thousands of hours in shooter games, I am conditioned to aim for the head, but this strategy absolutely works if used correctly. The main thing I'm trying to teach you guys here is expectation management. You need to know what your gear is capable of before you commit to a fight. If I'm running weak ammo and I see some Giga Chad sprinting around in class 6 and an Alton, I'm probably not taking that fight unless I absolutely have to. And hey, there's no shame in that. Remember guys, surviving is winning in Tarkov. And on the flip side, hopefully this encourages some of you to actually start using your best gear. I see so many players hoard their class 5 and class 6 armor forever because they're terrified to lose it. But the truth is that good armor massively increases your survivability. Good armor will give you room to make mistakes, it gives you time to react, and sometimes it's the difference between surviving a raid or rapidly transiting back to your stash. And remember, if you're too afraid to use your best gear, it's basically the same as not owning any at all. Okay, now that we've covered gear, ammo, and understanding what your loadout is capable of, let's talk about leaning, wide swinging, and crosshair placement. Because honestly, this is where a lot of players start winning or losing fights before a single bullet is even fired. Now first, I want to talk about leaning and keybinds. And yes, I know keybinds are very subjective, everybody has their own preferences, muscle memory, etc., hand size, mouse setup, all that. But I still highly recommend trying this setup at least a couple times because it has genuinely helped improve my PvP consistency. So for reference, I use a Logitech G Pro wireless mouse and it has two side buttons where my thumb naturally rests. I bound one button to lean left and the other to lean right. Doing this allows me to lean while still having full movement control with my keyboard hand. For me personally, this has made lean peeking feel significantly smoother and more natural. I have heard some people say that binding lean to the mouse affects their aim negatively, but honestly I haven't experienced that at all since making the switch. I then moved the slow lean left and right over to Q and E instead. Again, you absolutely do not have to do this, but I highly recommend at least experimenting with it because movement and peeking are incredibly important in Tarkov. Now let's actually talk about why leaning matters. When you swing an enemy, it is extremely important to incorporate a lean into the peek whenever possible. And the reason for this is because your torso and weapon will become visible before your legs fully clear the corner. That matters because your legs are where a huge portion of your movement audio is visually telegraphed from. A lot of players subconsciously react to when they expect your body to appear based on the sound cue. But if you're leaning properly, you can actually have your sights on them before they're fully ready to react. This tiny timing advantage matters enormously in Tarkov because the TTK, or time to kill, is so fast. Milliseconds matter in this game. Now the second thing you need to understand is wide swinging. And this is another thing that I see newer players doing correctly all the time. A lot of players hug the wall when they're preparing to swing an angle. Do not do this. Back away from the wall before committing to the swing. What this does is create a much tighter angle for you while also allowing you to visually acquire the enemy faster. Think about it like this. If I'm glued directly against the wall and sidestep around the corner, the enemy is going to see huge portions of my body before I'm actually able to fully see them myself. First my arm will appear, then my shoulder appears, then half my chest. Meanwhile, the enemy is already shooting before my head even clears the angle. This is terrible positioning. Instead, what you want to do is back away from the wall before you swing. This will allow your perspective to clear the angle much faster while exposing less of yourself during the initial peak. And when you combine this with the lean, now you're creating a much stronger engagement. So remember, don't hug the wall, back up, lean into your swings, and commit aggressively when you finally decide to peak. Now the next thing we need to discuss is crosshair placement. This is one of the simplest things player can improve immediately and it will make a massive difference in your PvP consistency. Moments matter in Tarkov. Again, the time to kill is incredibly fast, which means the less adjustment you need to make before firing, the better. Whether you're clearing a hallway, pushing a building, moving through dorms, maybe crossing the streets of Ground Zero, or entering into the resort, your crosshair should already be positioned where an enemy is most likely to appear. That means it won't be on the floor, at the ceiling, not randomly drifting around while you run. You want your weapon to be prepared and centered around likely threat areas at all times. Doing this will massively reduce the distance your mouse has to travel before you're on target. And over the course of thousands of fights, I can say that these tiny moments add up tremendously. Good crosshair placement makes your reactions look faster even when your reaction time itself hasn't changed. And honestly, once you get good at this, it will become automatic. Now, the last thing I want to mention here is recoil control. And for some of you, this part is going to be obvious if you played games like Counter-Strike, Valorant, Apex, or other competitive shooters. But I'm still going to mention it anyway for the people that genuinely don't understand how controllable many weapons actually are. When you spray full auto, you need to pull down on your mouse to counteract the recoil. Here's a basic AK-74 with no modifications whatsoever. If I mag dump this entire thing without controlling the recoil at all, notice how aggressively the weapon climbs upwards. Now watch what happens when I pull down while spraying. The recoil immediately becomes far more manageable. And something else important to notice here is that the actual horizontal spread isn't really as bad as you might think it is. Most of these rounds are still spraying relatively centered, so if you were to properly control the recoil and keep your crosshair around upper chest or face level, you'll be surprised how consistently you can land those shots even with basic weapons. A lot of players panic during sprays and completely lose control of this during a fight. Slow down, control your recoil, trust your aim, and commit to the spray. Okay, now the next thing I want to cover is a strategy called intel peeking. This is one of the most useful habits you can develop in Tarkov because information wins fights. Now what makes intel peeking so powerful is that these maneuvers are specifically designed to gather information without necessarily committing to the engagement immediately. Let's say I just arrived at dorms and I want to see if somebody is holding an angle down the hallway. If I just casually swing the angle and stare down the hall, there's a very good chance I immediately get headshot. Or worse, maybe somebody is watching from the opposite direction and now I'm trapped between multiple sight lines. Instead, what you can do is sprint quickly across the opening while free looking down the hallway. When you do this, pay very close attention. You're not necessarily trying to fully identify every detail. What you're doing is looking for movement, a silhouette, a shadow, a weapon shape, a player model, anything that confirms presence. And sometimes the intel peek itself baits the enemy into shooting, which is also valuable information. So whether you visually confirm the player or simply baited shots out of them, the intel peek still succeeded because you now have information to work with. You can even do multiple intel peeks if needed. Sprint across once to check one direction, and then repeat it to check the opposite side of the hallway. This is especially useful in places like dorms, resort, labs, or other tight interior environments where players commonly hold angles. Now something I highly recommend doing is immediately backing up your intel peeks with aggressive swings if you spotted a player. Because once you know where somebody is, you need to capitalize on that information before they fully reset mentally. A lot of players get nervous after being baited into shooting or being intel peeked. Some will panic reposition, some will freeze, some will overpeak, some will even stop holding the angle entirely. So if you capitalize quickly, you will catch them off guard. Now experienced veteran players will understand what you're doing when you intel peek them. If you intel peek a strong player, there's a good chance that they will immediately reposition after realizing they were spotted. And this is also the defense against this tactic that I'm telling you to take. The reason this is so good, it means that the information that has been gathered is now outdated. If somebody intel peeks you, reposition immediately whenever possible. Do not sit in the exact same spot waiting to get swung. That is exactly how you get pre-fired and deleted. You can also combine intel peeking with jumps if the environment allows it. A boosted jump with a free look can get you across dangerous openings way faster than simply sprinting normally. And depending on the angle, it can also make you much harder to track visually as well. Just be careful not to overdo it because predictable movement can still get you punished against strong players with a good reaction time. And that's pretty much it for my quick PvP tips to help you guys start winning more fights and escape from Tarkov. Give these techniques a try and let me know down in the comments if they help you survive and win some more fights. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you smash the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new and want more Escape from Tarkov, Road to Vostok, and Gray Zone Warfare content. If you're looking for more PvP tips and want to watch me break down actual fights against other players with commentary, go ahead and click on one of those bloops. And as always guys, thanks for watching. I'm Ghost and I'll see you in the next raid.